1957 movie again. This is The Bridge on the River Kwai. Released in 1957, as I said, and this one gets in at number 10 in my top movies of that year. It's directed by David Lean, and of course it won the Academy Award. There were also awards dished out for the writers, Carl Foreman and Michael Wilson. And I'd like to note that they received theirs posthumously because at the time they had been blacklisted by the communist witch hunt by McCarthy. That to the story then. It's a loose portrayal of what happened in World War II in Thailand. It was known then as Siam, when the occupational Japanese forces decided that they were going to build a railway from near the town of Kanchanaburi in Thailand, which is on the River Kwai. They were going to build a railway link into Burma to facilitate their intention to invade Burma and spread their occupation into South Asia. They had at their disposal prisoners of war from Holland, from England, from Australia and New Zealand, and of course Thai, Siamese as we would recall to them. So the occupational Japanese force had all these at their disposal. The film is basically in two parts. The first part, we witness the living conditions in the camp where the prisoners are held and where the Japanese army carry out their work details with the prisoners to facilitate the building of this railroad. At the start of the movie, we meet Colonel Nicholson, who's in charge of all the English army personnel, and he's a stickler for rules, and immediately courageously defies the Japanese Colonel Shihitu. Sorry, I might not have got that pronunciation quite right. Shihitu, with regard to the work detail, insisting that under the Geneva Convention, the officers are not required to work. This immediately causes a confrontation which leads to him being put in the oven, which is a small cubicle with a small door where he's put in there in solitary confinement for unbearably long periods of time while the others are out working. The conditions, of course, in this tropical weather are substantial. The heat is exhausting. The incidence of beriberi and malaria is rampant. The conditions are dreadful, and deaths are a daily occurrence. And so we got the picture then of this face-off between the two colonels, Nicholson and Shihitu, and Nicholson will not relent. He's prepared to die rather than submit to this. And because of the Japanese have a target date to complete this railroad, they're running out of time quickly, and basically they haven't got much of a clue of how to build a bridge because it keeps on collapsing. And so as a result of this, meetings with the colonel by the Japanese colonel, Nicholson slowly erodes the control from the Japanese to the point where he eventually is released from the oven and is involved in practical operations to build the bridge, which is somewhat unrealistic, but he appears to be helpful and compliant with the Japanese goal of completing this bridge. There are some amusing incidents early on. The whistling of the British troops as they march into the camp common ground, I found particularly interesting. Now, in the camp, there's also an American played by William Holden, who has basically created a situation where he's intent on trying to escape at all costs. And although he has some sort of rapport with the Brits, he eventually managed to escape into the jungle and turns up in a Thai village in the nick of time, as he's overhead. There are lots of buzzards waiting for his demise. He's then shipped out and ends up in Ceylon, where he is met by another British officer who's in intelligence, who is planning a trip into Thailand to destroy the bridge. They've got wind that this bridge is being put together, and they are intent on destroying that with an operation where they are sent in by parachute. And Jack Hawkins plays the army officer involved in this plan, and he manages to recruit Holden to help him. This then launches us into the second part of the movie, where we witness the guys walking through the jungle. They've got women, Thai women, helping them carry all their provisions, and of course we do get a hint of a romance between Holden and a young Siamese woman. It's almost a sort of brief encounter, but it's thrown in there to keep your interest. And then there's the elaborate plan to blow up the bridge, which has been completed by Nicholson and his crew. And we then have a considerable period of witnessing how that is carried out. And it's to say the least unbelievable how they managed to explode this bridge at exactly the time that a train is crossing it. But I suppose it's all a case of Hollywood action-packed drama. The film was filmed mainly in the old Ceylon, now Sri Lanka. It has its moments. Guinness is superb as the typical stiff upper lip army officer, and Holden is the opposite, erratic and impulsive, but very amenable. So there we have it, The Bridge on the River Kwai, 1957, and as I said, it sneaked into my top 10 at number 10.